I stood frozen as the silver wedding ring bounced once across the concrete driveway. Vanessa looked straight into my eyes. You're a failure, Ethan.
I'm done wasting my life
with someone who's never going to become anything.
If this is really what you want,
If this is really what you want, I said quietly,
if this is
I
really
won't
what
stop
you
you.
want, I won't stop
Then she climbed into her car. The engine started. Without another glance in my direction, she drove away. I looked down at the ring, and I picked it up. When I'd bought it 6 years earlier, it had cost nearly 3 months of my savings. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 35 years old. For nearly 12 years, I've worked as a mechanical engineer. By the time this story began, I had become a senior technical consultant for one of the largest engineering firms in the country. I wasn't famous. I wasn't wealthy. But inside my profession, people trusted my judgment. Complex structural failures, industrial equipment redesign, safety assessments. Those were the problems that landed on my desk. I loved solving impossible problems. Engineering wasn't just my career. It was the language through which I understood the world. My mother used to smile whenever she saw me taking apart old appliances as a child. She'd sit beside me on our tiny porch and say, "Build things that make people's lives better." Years later, when cancer began stealing her strength, she gave me another lesson I'd never forget. The loyalty of a good man is worth more than a mountain of gold. Money can attract people. Character keeps them. Never become the kind of man your father was. I never forgot those words. My father had destroyed our family because he couldn't remain faithful. He chased excitement, temporary pleasure, empty attention. By the time he realized what he'd lost, it was too late. I already knew what betrayal looked like. I'd watched my mother cry enough for one lifetime. I promised myself no woman would ever suffer because of my choices. Then, I met Vanessa. She walked into a downtown coffee shop, carrying 3 folders that slipped from her arms all at once. Papers scattered everywhere. Without thinking, I knelt to help. "I'm so sorry," she laughed nervously. "I swear I'm usually not this clumsy." "It's okay." I handed her the last folder. She smiled. It wasn't the kind of smile you forget. Warm, confident, bright enough to make strangers smile back. "I'm Vanessa." "Ethan." We ended up talking for nearly 2 hours. Neither of us noticed the cafe had almost emptied. She had just started working in corporate marketing. She was ambitious, funny, quick-witted. She had enormous dreams. I admired that. Over the next several months, we became inseparable. Weekend road trips, movie nights, long walks through city parks, cheap diners, coffee dates. Neither of us had much money, but somehow, everything felt rich. One evening, we sat on the hood of my old pickup truck overlooking the city lights. Vanessa rested her head against my shoulder. "Promise me something." "What?" "No matter how successful we become, we'll always stay like this." I smiled. "I promise." She extended her pinky finger. "Deal?" I laughed. "Deal." Looking back now, that promise hurts more than the divorce, because for a while, we truly meant it. 2 years later, I proposed at the same overlook. The ring wasn't large. I apologized before she even answered. "I wish I could buy something bigger." She shook her head so quickly, I almost laughed. "I don't care how much it costs. I only care who gave it to me." She said yes. We married 4 months later, in a small church surrounded by family and close friends. No luxury ballroom, no designer decorations, no expensive orchestra, just laughter, music, homemade food, and people who genuinely loved us. I believed I was the luckiest man alive. For the first few years, life was beautifully ordinary. Every morning I woke before sunrise, made breakfast, packed our lunches, left little notes beside her coffee cup. Sometimes they simply read, "I love you." Sometimes, "Have an amazing day." She kept every note inside a small wooden box. Or at least, she used to. When the faucet leaked, I fixed it. When the lawn needed mowing, I handled it. When her car made strange noises, I spent weekends underneath it until everything worked again. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. That's simply what husbands do. At least, that's what I believed. Vanessa's career began moving faster than mine. She received promotions, attended networking events, started spending time with executives and entrepreneurs. She returned home talking about luxury vacations, private clubs, people buying houses that looked like resorts. At first, I enjoyed listening. I was proud of her. But slowly, the conversations changed. They're our age, Ethan. So? They already own beach houses. We're doing okay. Okay isn't success. I laughed softly. It depends who you ask. She didn't laugh back. Weeks turned into months. Comparisons became routine. Melissa's husband just bought her a Mercedes. My director's husband surprised her with a yacht trip. You know Jason from accounting. He invested early and retired. Every conversation somehow ended with the same invisible question. Why aren't you enough? I tried working even harder, accepted additional consulting assignments, stayed late, studied emerging engineering technologies after midnight, not because she demanded it, because I wanted to build a comfortable future together. One Friday evening I came home carrying flowers, nothing extravagant. Just white lilies, her favorite. She barely looked at them. You remembered flowers. She forced a smile, but forgot today was the deadline for the lake house reservation. I told you we couldn't afford it right now, she sighed. You always have a reason. I quietly placed the flowers into water. That night, neither of us spoke much over dinner. The silence felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. 3 weeks later, an envelope arrived in our mailbox. Inside were divorce papers, and for the first time in 6 years, I realized love alone might not be enough. I stared at the envelope for nearly 5 minutes before opening it. Even though I already knew what it contained, part of me hoped I was wrong. Maybe it was another mortgage statement. Maybe insurance paperwork. Maybe anything except what my heart already feared. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the documents. The first page carried only 2 words that mattered. Petition for divorce. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. The room felt strangely quiet. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. A clock ticked somewhere down the hallway. Outside, children laughed while riding bicycles. Life continued as though nothing had happened. But inside my home, everything had just changed. Vanessa walked into the living room, carrying another box of her belongings. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry anymore. She looked detached, as if she had already moved on weeks earlier. You got the papers. I see that. They're fair. I slowly placed them back on the table. If that's what you believe. She crossed her arms. I've spent years waiting for you to become someone. I looked at her. I thought I already was someone. She shook her head. A good husband isn't enough anymore. Those words hurt more than I expected, because for 6 years, being a good husband had been the most important job I'd ever had. I loved you, I whispered. I know. I still do. She looked away. But love doesn't pay for the life I want. Silence settled between us. The woman standing in front of me looked exactly like the woman I had married. The same face, the same eyes, the same smile, except that smile no longer belonged to me. I'll sign, I finally said. She looked surprised. You're not going to argue. What would be the point? I thought you'd fight. I won't force someone to stay where they no longer want to be. She picked up her purse. I guess this is goodbye. I nodded. Goodbye, Vanessa. She walked toward the front door. Just before leaving, she paused. Without turning around, she said quietly, I hope one day you become the man you always wanted to be. The door closed. I stood there for several minutes, staring at the empty hallway. The house had never felt so large, or so lonely. The divorce moved quickly. There were no children, no businesses, no endless courtroom battles. We sold the house, split what little equity remained, signed the paperwork. 6 years, reduced to a few signatures. The day the judge finalized everything, rain covered the courthouse windows. People hurried outside holding umbrellas. Some smiled, some argued, some celebrated. Everyone had somewhere to go. I walked alone to my aging pickup truck, sat behind the steering wheel. closed the door. For the first time since my mother died, I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a man mourning a future that would never exist. I couldn't bring myself to rent another apartment. Instead, I drove 3 hours to the small town where I'd grown up. My parents' old house had remained empty since my mother's passing. It wasn't luxurious. White wooden siding, a small front porch, an aging oak tree. The paint had begun fading, but every corner carried memories. I unlocked the front door. The familiar scent of old wood surrounded me. Everything looked almost exactly as I'd left it. My father's worn recliner, my mother's bookshelf, the dining table where we'd shared thousands of meals. I ran my hand across the kitchen counter. "So," I whispered, "I'm home." That first night, I slept in my childhood bedroom. The ceiling still had tiny glow-in-the-dark stars I'd glued there when I was 10 years old. Life had taken me around the country. Yet somehow, I had returned to where everything started. The following morning, I woke before sunrise. Old habits refused to disappear. I made coffee, sat on the porch, watched mist rise above the quiet neighborhood. No traffic, no arguments, no expectations, just birds singing. For the first time in months, my mind felt still. Then my phone rang. It was my manager. "Ethan, morning. We've got a serious problem. What happened?" He explained that an industrial processing facility in Ohio had discovered severe structural stress inside one of its primary support systems. Several consulting firms had already failed to solve it. Production losses were approaching $2 million every day. "When can you get there?" "I'll leave in an hour." "That's why we count on you." When I arrived at the facility, panic filled every office. Engineers argued around conference tables. Managers stared at financial reports. Contractors blamed each other. The plant director met me personally. "I've heard you're the guy who fixes impossible problems. I'll do my best." He smiled nervously. "That's all we've got left." For 2 straight days, I inspected every beam, every weld, every vibration reading, every blueprint. Something didn't make sense. Everyone focused on the damaged supports. I ignored them. Instead, I traced the stress back through the entire production line. Late on the second night, I found it. A tiny design modification made years earlier had shifted vibration frequencies throughout the building. The damaged beams weren't the cause. They were the symptom. I proposed an entirely different solution. The repair cost less than 15% of every previous proposal. 3 weeks later, then another. Oil refineries, bridges, aircraft manufacturing plants, power stations, steel mills. Everywhere people encountered engineering problems nobody else could solve. Someone eventually mentioned my name. I wasn't chasing recognition. I simply enjoyed solving puzzles. One afternoon, after presenting recommendations inside a manufacturing headquarters in Chicago, an elderly gentleman approached me. His tailored navy suit was immaculate. His silver hair was perfectly combed. Despite his age, his eyes remained incredibly sharp. "You must be Ethan Carter." "Yes, sir. I'm William Harrington." The name immediately caught my attention. William Harrington had built one of America's largest industrial equipment companies before retiring nearly a decade earlier. We shook hands. "I've heard remarkable things about you." "Thank you. I sat through your entire presentation." I smiled. "I hope it wasn't too boring." He laughed. "Not at all. You don't think like engineers." "I am an engineer." "No." He shook his head. "You think like someone who understands people." I wasn't sure what he meant. He continued. "Machines fail because people make decisions. You study both." Before leaving, he handed me a business card. "If you ever want to talk, call me." 3 weeks later, I did. We met for lunch. That lunch became dinner, then weekly conversations. William wasn't interested in discussing retirement. He wanted to discuss the future. Artificial intelligence, infrastructure, energy, manufacturing, advanced materials, supply chains. Every conversation challenged the way I thought. One afternoon he asked, "Ethan, if someone gave you unlimited resources, What would you build? I answered without hesitation. Engineering systems that eliminate unnecessary failures before they happen. He smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. A month later, he invited me into a conference room occupied by 6 investors. On the screen behind them appeared a company name I had never seen before. Apex Integrated Engineering Technologies. William looked around the room. I've spent 40 years building companies. Now I want to build one last thing. He turned toward me, and I don't want to run it. The room became completely silent. I want you to. I stared at him. I'm just an engineer. He smiled. No, you're a builder. There is a difference. I accepted. Not because of the money. Because for the first time since losing Vanessa, someone believed in my future more than my past. Over the next 12 months, we designed predictive engineering platforms capable of identifying catastrophic industrial failures long before they occurred. Major corporations signed contracts. Governments became interested. Energy companies joined. Transportation giants invested. Every quarter, the company doubled in value. Investment firms competed for ownership. International expansion happened faster than anyone predicted. William refused to reduce my equity. You earned it, he always said. 1 year after our first meeting, financial analysts released an updated valuation. I sat quietly inside my office, reading the report 3 separate times. My ownership stake had officially crossed $1 billion. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and whispered the first words that came into my heart. Mom, I hope I made you proud. A year can change a life in ways no one expects. 12 months earlier, I had stood alone in my parents' old house, wondering whether I would ever smile again. Now I was sitting in a glass-walled office overlooking the city skyline, reviewing plans for 3 new engineering research centers. Success hadn't arrived overnight. It had arrived one early morning. One difficult decision. One solved problem at a time. Money had changed my surroundings. It had never changed my priorities. Every Friday afternoon, I still walked through our headquarters without an entourage. I greeted the receptionist by name. I thanked the maintenance staff. I ate lunch with junior engineers. I remembered what it felt like to be invisible. I never wanted anyone else to feel that way. Our company had become one of the fastest-growing engineering technology firms in North America. Our predictive infrastructure systems were preventing bridge failures, improving industrial safety, and saving companies billions of dollars. The media called me the mysterious billionaire engineer. I ignored the headlines. The only opinions that mattered belonged to the people whose lives were made safer because of our work. One morning, my assistant, Grace, placed a folder on my desk. Today's scholarship applications. I smiled. My favorite meeting. Every year we funded hundreds of engineering students who couldn't afford tuition. Many came from families just like mine. Some had lost parents. Others worked 2 jobs while studying. I read every application personally. Talent, I often said, should never be limited by someone's bank account. Later that afternoon, another proposal crossed my desk. A children's hospital needed advanced structural renovations. The project wasn't profitable. Some board members questioned the expense. I signed the approval without hesitation. We're doing it. One executive asked quietly, why? I looked out the window. Because my mother spent too many nights in hospitals. The room became silent. No child should worry whether the building around them is safe. No one argued again. Fonts. While my life quietly moved forward, Vanessa's was moving in the opposite direction. The luxury she had chased disappeared far faster than she imagined. The businessman she had started dating shortly after our divorce wasn't nearly as successful as he had claimed. Most of his expensive lifestyle had been financed with debt. Bad investments followed. Then lawsuits. Within months, his company collapsed. The expensive apartment was gone. The luxury car was repossessed. Friends who had once invited them onto yachts suddenly stopped answering calls. One evening, she sat alone inside a small rental apartment, scrolling through old photographs. There we were, standing beside my old pickup truck, smiling. laughing, completely unaware of what the future would become. For the first time in years, she didn't miss my potential. She missed my peace. Meanwhile, invitations to speak at international engineering conferences filled my calendar. Most of them I politely declined. Then one invitation caught my attention: the Harrison Foundation Annual Charity Gala. Every year, business leaders gathered to raise money for education, hospitals, and disaster recovery. William Harrington smiled after reading the invitation. "You should go. I don't enjoy attention." "You aren't going for attention." "Then why?" He smiled. "Because your story gives people hope." I finally agreed. The evening of the gala arrived. My tailor delivered a navy tuxedo. Grace reviewed the schedule. "The press will be outside." "I know." "The governor will be attending." "I know." And several Fortune 500 CEOs requested introductions. I laughed softly. "I still feel more comfortable around blueprints than billionaires." She smiled. "That's exactly why people respect you." The ballroom occupied the top floor of one of the city's most luxurious hotels. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. A live orchestra played softly. Business leaders, philanthropists, scientists, investors, political leaders. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. Outside the entrance, cameras flashed continuously. A long line of luxury vehicles arrived one after another. When my car stopped, security immediately opened the door. Before I had taken 2 steps, the event director hurried toward me. "Good evening, Mr. Carter. Welcome." Board members approached. Investors followed. Several CEOs shook my hand. "It's an honor. We've been looking forward to meeting you. Congratulations on the new infrastructure initiative." I thanked each of them politely. Nothing about the attention felt natural to me. Across the entrance hall, another guest had just arrived. Vanessa. She accepted the invitation from a friend who worked in corporate finance. She adjusted her evening dress and glanced casually toward the crowd. At first, she only noticed the photographers, then the security team, then the executives standing respectfully around one man. She frowned. "Who's that?" Her friend answered without looking. "That's Ethan Carter." Vanessa smiled slightly. "What a coincidence. I used to be married to someone with that name." Her friend finally turned, then looked back toward the entrance in disbelief. "No," she whispered. "Not that Ethan Carter. The billionaire engineer. The founder everyone's talking about." Vanessa slowly lifted her eyes. The man surrounded by CEOs turned slightly. For the first time in over a year, our eyes met. The color drained from her face. Her breathing stopped. The world around her seemed to disappear. She finally understood. The mysterious billionaire the entire country had been talking about was the same man she had once called a failure. Vanessa couldn't move. The ballroom buzzed with conversation around her, but every sound faded into the background. Her eyes remained fixed on me, as though she were looking at a stranger wearing the face of the man she had once married. I continued greeting guests, unaware that she had just arrived. "Mr. Carter?" A governor shook my hand. "Thank you for everything your foundation is doing for engineering education." "It's my pleasure," I replied. "Education changed my life. I'm simply giving others the opportunity someone once gave me." Another executive stepped forward. "The children's hospital renovation is nearly complete. The doctors asked me to thank you personally." I smiled. "Tell them the thanks belong to the engineers and construction crews. They're the ones saving lives." Vanessa listened from only a few yards away. She remembered the man who used to repair broken faucets himself, because hiring a plumber seemed unnecessary. The man who packed her lunch every morning. The man she had called a failure. Tears slowly filled her eyes. The charity dinner lasted nearly 3 hours. I spoke briefly about responsibility. Not wealth. Not power. Responsibility. When success arrives, I told the audience, it doesn't ask what you own, it asks what you're willing to give. The room erupted into applause. After the speeches, guests began mingling again. I stepped onto a quiet outdoor terrace overlooking the city lights. The cool evening air felt refreshing after hours inside the crowded ballroom. A familiar voice interrupted the silence. "Ethan!" I turned around. Vanessa stood a few feet away. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. She looked older, not because of age, because regret has a way of changing someone's face. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me." I offered a gentle smile. "I remember every important chapter of my life." She lowered her eyes. "I don't deserve your kindness." I didn't answer. The silence encouraged her to continue. "I've replayed that day in the driveway 1,000 times. So have I." Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "I was cruel. You were. I thought money was everything." "I know. I thought success looked like expensive houses, luxury vacations, designer clothes." She wiped her face. "I was wrong." The city lights reflected in the tears she could no longer hide. "I lost everything. I heard. My relationship ended. My friends disappeared. I had people around me, but nobody who truly cared." She laughed bitterly. "And all along, I had already thrown away the only person who ever loved me without asking for anything in return." I leaned against the railing. The wind carried distant sounds of traffic below. "I never hated you, Vanessa." She looked surprised. "You didn't?" "No. I was heartbroken. But hate would have destroyed the man my mother raised." She nodded slowly. "I remember her. So do I. She always treated me like family." She did. Vanessa began crying even harder. "I disappointed her too." I looked toward the stars. My mother believed people could change. She also believed change only matters when it's genuine. Vanessa took one hesitant step closer. "Ethan, I never stopped thinking about you." I remained silent. "I know I have no right to ask this. But—" She struggled to finish the sentence. "Is there any chance we could start over?" For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I smiled. Not because I was considering it, because I finally understood something. The pain I'd carried for so long was gone. "Vanessa, yes? You didn't leave because I was poor." She looked down. "You left because you couldn't see who I already was." Every word landed gently. Never with anger. Never with revenge. I was the same man then. The money didn't create my character. It simply gave my character a larger stage. She covered her mouth as tears continued falling. "I know. I see that now. You believed becoming rich would make me valuable." I shook my head softly. "But real value is built long before anyone notices it," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I know. I truly loved you. I know. I was just too blind to appreciate it. I know." She looked at me with the same eyes she had years ago, when we sat on the hood of my old pickup truck, watching city lights. "I still love you." I smiled sadly. "I believe you." Hope briefly returned to her face. Then I continued. "But love alone isn't enough. It was the same lesson I had learned the hardest way. I forgave you a long time ago." Her shoulders trembled. "But forgiveness doesn't always mean going back." She nodded through tears. "I understand. I've spent the last year rebuilding my life. Not my bank account. My heart. And I finally found peace. I can't lose that again." She closed her eyes. "I don't want your money. I know. I just wish I had understood your worth before everyone else did." Cass. I reached into my jacket pocket. For a brief moment, I held the silver wedding ring I had kept all this time. Not because I hoped we would reunite, but because it reminded me of the promises I had made to myself. I placed it gently into her hand. She stared at it in disbelief. "I think this belongs to your past." She closed her fingers around it and began sobbing. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I forgive you." Those 4 words seemed heavier than every apology she had spoken. She looked up one final time. "Thank you. For loving me when I didn't know how to love you back." I nodded. "I hope you find peace too." Thuk. As I walked back toward the ballroom, I didn't look behind me. Not because I was angry. Because some chapters deserve a beautiful ending instead of another beginning. Inside, William Harrington smiled as I returned. "Everything all right?" I smiled back. "Better than all right. I finally let go." He placed a hand on my shoulder. then tonight wasn't just another charity gala. No, it was freedom. Months later, our foundation opened 3 new engineering schools and completed 2 children's hospitals. Thousands of young people received scholarships. Families found hope. Communities became safer. Whenever reporters asked me the secret behind my success, I always gave the same answer. Success begins long before money arrives. It begins with integrity. It grows through perseverance. And it becomes meaningful only when it improves someone else's life. As for Vanessa, we never met again. I sincerely hoped she found happiness. Not because she had once been my wife, but because bitterness never builds a better future. My mother had been right all along. The loyalty of a good man is worth more than a mountain of gold. And no amount of money could ever buy what character had already earned. This story reminds us that true success is never determined by our current bank balance, job title, or social status. Character, integrity, loyalty, and perseverance are the foundations of a meaningful life. Ethan's journey teaches that genuine greatness is built quietly, through consistent effort, discipline, and kindness, even when no one is watching. Instead of allowing rejection to make him bitter, he transformed his pain into motivation, proving that setbacks can become the starting point of extraordinary success. The story also warns against judging people based solely on their financial situation. Wealth can disappear overnight, but honesty, wisdom, and strong values remain for a lifetime. Vanessa's greatest mistake was not leaving a poor man. It was failing to recognize the value of a good man whose character was already priceless. Many people focus on visible success while overlooking the qualities that truly sustain a relationship: respect, trust, sacrifice, and unconditional support. Another important lesson is that forgiveness is a sign of strength, not weakness. Ethan chose peace over revenge, showing that emotional maturity is far more powerful than humiliating someone who once hurt you. His success became meaningful because he used it to help others through scholarships, hospitals, and opportunities for future generations instead of seeking validation.